千里之行，始于足下. A journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath the feet. We now gather in the Tao to travel the journey together.
First, let's look at the overall chapter. Last time we did the sectional analysis. So anyone who needs to review, I'm very thankful that we have Mark who has made that available on YouTube. But to jump to the conclusion, as you can see, we divided up the chapter in 3 segments, 3 sections, if you will. And we can tell that's how they divide up based on the structure of the original lines. So looking at the original classical Chinese, we see repeating characters indicating a poetic structure. And those repeating characters are translated as repeated English words, as you can see. And what we left off before was around the middle of the chapter. We talked about how the Tao itself may be indistinct, may be unclear, but when we look into it, we can perceive image, which is the image of the patterns that is embedded within nature, within existence, within reality. And there are many patterns like that. We can talk quite a bit about those patterns, and we'll revisit those slides in just a moment as a quick reminder, quick recap for everyone. And we also talked about how there's substance within the emptiness of the Tao. So the Tao is the void, but not just any void, not a void of just nothingness, but a void that is filled with infinite potentiality waiting for manifestation. So that is why within the Tao, we can perceive substance. Substance in terms of material things that populate this world. So all living things belong to that category. They arose out of somewhere, and the ultimate source for everything is the Tao. So as you can see, we're about halfway through. Today, we're going to be talking about essence, faith, and then ancient times to the present. Now, with all these lines, you see the English word within, from lines 6, 8, 10, and 12. And the within it all comes from the Qi Zong, the first 2 characters of lines 6, 8, 10, and 12. So one thing that we did previously was to highlight that character, Zong, which is the character for middle, center, inside. So you may recall a slide that looks kind of like this. I went back and colorized the character for Zong so you can see it a little bit more clearly. So previously, we talked about how Zong depicts the middle, not the highest, not the lowest, but somewhere in the middle, and we can use that in many different ways. So for instance, we have, when we combine it with the character for year, we have young age, middle age, and old age. And middle age is where we use that character, right in the middle. And we talk about grade and quality. We talk about high grade, medium grade, low grade, and as you can see, it's right in the middle. So Zong is also used to express the original name of China. So even before China recognized itself as a modern state, it always thought of itself as 中, the central place, in terms of expressions like 中原, 中土. So the central land is how the ancient Chinese thought of themselves. And that's because of the fertile territories ripe for farming and agriculture that ancient China was blessed with, which led to population centers, villages, towns, and cities, and people from outlying areas congregating in the central plains, the central land, to do trading and commerce. So it evolved from that to what we know as China today. So 中 is the central place. And the opposite of that, the opposite of center or on the inside, is on the outside. So to the ancient Chinese, outside will be outside the ancient borders of the ancient Chinese empire. So that's why, W-A-I. So 中 inside, why outside, 中国 China, 外国 foreign countries. So when we append a person, 人, to China, 中国, we get Chinese, 中国人. So this is what the Chinese people call themselves. Colloquially, they will refer to themselves as 老中. 老 means old. So it's a term of endearment. 老中 just means 中国人, just means Chinese. So 外国人will be a foreigner. So this concept is so deeply embedded in the thinking of Chinese people that even when they immigrate into the United States, they will still stick to thinking in terms of 中国, 外国. So for instance, one time at a restaurant here in Southern California, a Chinese restaurant, there are people waiting to be served. So the serving staff is all Chinese, and the customers are a mixture of Chinese American customers, and Caucasians. And in this particular case, that was the mixture, but other times there's also the non-Caucasian Americans as well. So one particular Caucasian customer waiting for service is becoming rather impatient. So the Chinese waitress looked at him, realized that he had been waiting for a long time, and yells out to another server saying, "Hey, why don't you go help that foreigner? 你去帮老外." So that is the customary way of thinking for this person who's Chinese. Now, she did not realize that he, the customer, knew Chinese, so heard everything that she said as she was yelling it out with total comprehension. So he said, 我不是外国人, I'm not a foreigner. 你才是外国人, you're the foreigner. Because remember, we're talking about Southern California. We're talking about America. So in America, the Chinese Americans are the foreigners, and this particular gentleman was an American national. So this is just a way to kind of illustrate how deeply embedded this idea has become to the typical Chinese person, the in or the out, the Chinese versus the foreigner. And then lastly, we can also apply the term to 中庸, which means moderation. So this is part of the Tao, and it's also something that Confucius taught quite a bit. And when I bring up Confucius, I know there's going to be people who will be like, well, he was opposed to the Tao. No, that's not true. He was a student of the Tao. People who think that there's some sort of conflict between Confucius and Tao sages, the strict, regimented Confucians versus the free-flowing Taoist, well, you've bought into sort of a conflict mindset popular in the West. To the ancient Chinese themselves, they were all different parts of the same beautiful painting. That is, they were all studying the Tao, each in their different way. Confucian teachings, his students, subsequent generations were not exempt from that. They were all students of the Tao. So when they spoke of moderation, 中庸之道, they were actually talking about the Tao teaching, ancient, authentic Tao teachings. So I wanted to place that into context and highlight a couple of areas where we definitely think differently. We're not used to the way that they think on the other side of the Pacific. All right, so last time we also looked over this particular painting. This painting is Fuxi. He was one of the ancient mythological / legendary emperors. So last time we pointed out that his attire was primitive. He had no footwear. His fingernails were not trimmed because he lived in primitive times. That is to say, roughly 5,000 years ago, prior to the beginning of Chinese civilization proper. So he was a tribal leader who had an intuitive grasp of patterns. The most important thing that I pointed out last time was the following. The bottom part of the painting had two elements of interest. And when we zoom into that, we see to the left, the bagua, to the right, a turtle. So last time we spent quite a bit of time here. The bagua, the 8 trigrams, represented the progression, the binary progression, expansion of 2, 4, 8, etc. That was one of the patterns noticed by the ancient Chinese. But what about the turtle? What kind of pattern did he represent? Well, it was not apparent in this picture. Here, the turtle looks kind of dark, but there is another source where we can see it more clearly. So, aside from the bagua and the turtle, we had other sources. Here, this is Luo Shu. This is book of the Luo River, and it has a clearer depiction of the turtle that climbed out of it. So the ancient legend had it that when this tribal leader saw the turtle climb out of Luohe, the river, he noticed that it had markings on its shell. So counting up the markings, it ended up being a 3x3 magic square. So we know pretty much for sure that the 3x3 magic square was just one of the insights of the ancient sages. Might have been Fuxi, might have been someone else during that time, but they shape a story based on that, about this turtle climbing out of the river with the markings on it, to express that, well, you see, this is embedded, this is part of nature, and this was a sign from the gods. But now we know, it's just plain human insight. So if you were to depict the dots as numbers, you get the magic square that we see here. And you can match everything. You can match all the numbers that you see in the 3x3 matrix here to the back of the turtle. Probably the easiest one to see is the one right in the center. That's a dot pattern of 5 dots. Hence, we get the number 5 here. And then the other ones all correspond to the different squares. So the pattern that was noted by the ancient Chinese 5,000 years ago was that, first of all, out of 9 squares, all the digits from 1 to 9 are utilized. So a completeness in nature, nothing is wasted. And you can add them up horizontally, vertically, or diagonally, and they will all add up to 15, no matter which direction you go. This depicts a hidden balance, a balance that is not very obvious, but it's there nevertheless, and it reveals itself to someone who studies nature. So this was interesting, but when I talk about patterns in life itself, in existence, and in reality, I always want to make sure that I mention patterns noted by people other than the ancient Chinese. So for instance, we also talked about ancient Greece, the golden ratio, and the Fibonacci sequence was written about by Italian mathematician Fibonacci, named after him, but it also appeared in ancient Hindu mathematics. So the point to be made here is that noticing patterns that are part of nature, part of existence, part of reality, that's what we do. This is the way of all humanity. So without getting too deeply into the different patterns, it's important to just talk about pattern recognition. We recognize patterns. Some of the patterns that we recognize are less obvious than others. So an example that I pointed out last time was the Mandelbrot set. Mandelbrot is a French mathematician, much more recent. He pioneered fractal geometry, which became part of the science of chaos. Fascinating subjects, and they have all the ideas explored and uncovered in those subject areas have contributed massively to human understanding. We now know that nature is fractal, essentially fractal, and that everywhere we look, whether it's the mountain range, the hillside, beaches, trees, plants, no matter where we look, we see fractals everywhere. So when people figure this out, today, when we go to the movies, we see a lot of special effects that are computer generated. Sometimes what they generate is indistinguishable from reality. We can't tell that something is computer generated. Well, they achieve that realism by incorporating fractal algorithms in the software that generates those images. So next time you see a movie, and if there are computer generated clouds, they will look like real clouds because they incorporate fractal geometry. Trees, the same. Human skin, same. Everything is fractal. So it's a pattern that's embedded in nature. Now, these are what we talked about last time, but I want to emphasize that patterns that come from mathematics are not the only patterns in life. There are plenty of other patterns that we can get into that we did not get into last time. So I want to leave this particular graphic up on the screen. I want to park it here for now because it is now 11:26. It's actually time for our mid-meeting break. We're done with our recap from last time, We're ready to blaze into a new territory. So when we come back from our mid-meeting 5-minute break, we will get into another pattern that's equally important as fractals and the other patterns that we have seen, that we can make use of and recognize and perceive clearly in our lives. So we'll park it here and then come back with additional talk about patterns that are non-mathematical in nature. So I'm going to mute the microphone. Let's go ahead and take a 5-minute break. We'll be back at around 11:33. Okay, time for us to get right back into it. So I want to talk about a life pattern that you personally experience. And I want to, as we move ahead for today's presentation, I would like it to be a little more interactive as we have done before. That is to say, every now and then, I'm going to be asking everyone to contemplate some questions. So you have to not just listen, but also engage your mind and think about some of these very important topics. Now, of course, I don't want to spend the entire time that we have together with a whole bunch of questions and then wait for the answer. I want to strike the right balance between content, delivering content, and also and interaction. Interaction for you and me, for the whole group. Balance, after all, is central to the Tao. Now, let's talk about life patterns. So, the topic now is the hero's journey. This is a pattern that's repeated over and over again. It isn't mathematical in nature, but it's embedded into life. So patterns in the Tao aren't just about mathematics. There are all kinds of other patterns. The hero's journey is one of them. So what is it? Well, there are certain patterns that repeat themselves in legendary tales of mythology, in the stories we tell one another, in the narratives overall. And these patterns all have a lot in common. They all go through predictable stages. There's always different parts when you get to that particular pattern within the overall pattern. So in 1949, author, who's a professor of literature, Joseph Campbell, wrote about narrative patterns in a book called Hero with 1,000 Faces. And these patterns are found in myths and legends all over the world. What is the most interesting thing about it, from my perspective, from a sort of Tao perspective, is that these patterns are found even in isolated tribes of humanity who had never had contact with the outside world. So in other words, they came up with their own stories and mythology and legends, and they all follow these predictable patterns, but they had never seen other tales of mythology or legends. So they didn't know that it was a pattern they were supposed to follow. They just had it. So it appeared to be a pattern that is embedded, imprinted deeply in the consciousness of all humanity. In other words, it's part of the Tao for us, for all of us. We resonate with this pattern without knowing it. We resonate with it strongly, powerfully, when we see it represented in entertainment. When we watch a movie, a television show, if we were to look at it from the perspective of patterns, we would be able to figure out the parts. We will be able to name them. But most of the time, without realizing, we just enjoy the entertainment. Now, how does that apply to the Tao? How does that apply to you? So think of the name of this pattern, the hero's journey. First realization is that you're the hero. You're the hero of your own narrative. You know, sometimes people ask, Derek, how is it that you can get along with so many different kinds of people? Even people that others consider to be extremely difficult, somehow I can get along with them. Somehow I can respect them. You know, it doesn't mean that I let them walk all over me, quite the opposite. But I find something of value in them, whereas other people feel nothing but contempt. And what I tell them is that, well, I realize an important thing, and that is, as much as these individuals are disliked by others, I know that in their own minds, they are the central characters in their own narrative. They did not get up in the morning, look in the mirror, and say, I'm going to be a bad person today. I'm going to be the villain today. No. They all get up in the morning, look at themselves in the mirror, and say, today the hero goes forth. Now, of course, in many of the legends, many of the tales that we've had since the dawn of humanity, a lot of them have featured sort of a male protagonist. And that's only because since primitive times, it's been the human male that's gone out to explore, to test the waters, so to speak, to go through challenges. Times have changed. It isn't just the male role anymore to head out there into the great unknown. Today, it's both male and female, as it should be. This particular journey, so I want you to first accept that you're the hero, regardless of who you are, where you come from, what your gender may be. You're the hero of your own narrative. That's number one. Number two, the journey that we're talking about here, the hero's journey, your journey, it's one of many journeys within the overall context of your life journey. So I think you can figure out what that means. In the complexity of human life, you're going to go on quite a few journeys. Each journey is an exploration of something. So you go on many journeys, and occasionally you've got some journeys that overlap. That is, you're working on multiple things at the same time. Now, each one of those explorations, each one of those journeys will follow a particular pattern. First, I'm going to show you a pictorial representation of that pattern. Then I'm going to bring it back to the Tao and talk about how it applies to the Tao. So this is a commonly seen pictorial representation of the hero's journey. The hero's journey is a process that you go through in life. So a couple of things should jump out at you. So first of all, you are the figure at the top, the hiking figure. You hear the call to adventure, and then you go on this great journey, make a big circle, and then eventually return to your starting point. So where you are when you hear the call of adventure, the call to adventure is the known and the familiar. It's your world. It's the world where you are comfortable. Hearing the call to adventure means getting into the unknown. The unknown, where you will be exploring things that you have not seen before, learn things that you did not know before. So that particular part of the journey is the trials, the challenges. So along the way, you encounter other people who become your mentors or helpers. And as you go through, work your way through all the challenges, you eventually come to, and there are multiple terms in regards to this. Here you see abyss, death and rebirth, revelation, etc. Other terms that are talked about in the study of the pattern would be things like confrontation against evil or dark night of the soul. We'll get to that in just a moment. As a result of that confrontation, you are transformed by the experience, and eventually you make a return. So most of the hero's journey is in the world of the unknown. What's this got to do with the Tao? Well, I'm about to present to you the connection. So first, I'm going to reiterate the idea that this is something that you experience over and over again in your life. So it would be best for you to realize that it's happening and be able to recognize the patterns. That, I think, is just common sense. So now, let me give you an example. So hero's journey to the left, an example journey to the right. This may match what happened previously when you encountered Tao for the first time. So in the typical hero's journey, whether it's a myth, a legend, a movie, a television show, there's always the call to adventure. So this is when, Luke Skywalker is called upon to join the resistance against the evil empire. This is when Indiana Jones hears about something interesting that he should look into. So this is where Neo hears about how the world is much more than he suspected that would turn out to be the Matrix. So the call to adventure is the call to get into the unknown, as you saw in the previous diagram. So in the example journey, the call to adventure, the call to explore, may be the first time you hear about the Tao. So the Tao beckons, come along for a journey of discovery. Here's something that you don't really know about, but that can benefit you if you learn more about it. Spiritual cultivation. Now, in hero's journey, there's always an initial refusal of the call. So Luke Skywalker is going to say, no, I got to help my Uncle Owen in the family farm. I can't join the resistance. I wish I could, but I just can't. And, other heroes have other refusals. It all plays out in every tale. I can't do it. You guys go ahead. It's not for me. So in the example journey, it may be the initial dismissal. Oh, those new age ideas. Yeah. I know all about that. It's nothing more than just, common sense. And, those gurus, those spiritual gurus, I don't want to have anything to do with them. So initially, you dismiss. Your attitude is to dismiss the whole thing outright. But then something happens. The pattern is that something occurs that motivates you to cross the threshold. So for Luke Skywalker, it was when his family farm was destroyed. The Imperial stormtroopers came by and killed his family. So now he had no choice but to join the resistance. So for other heroes, it manifests in different ways. For Neo, he swallowed the red pill to wake up from the illusion called the Matrix. So for you, there might have been something happening initially that motivated you to take another look. After your dismissal, nah, that's not for me. That's too new age. I don't like those people. There might have been something that piqued your curiosity. Maybe I should get into it. I'll just look at it a little bit to see if it's as beneficial as people say. Either way, You start getting into it, you've crossed the threshold. That's another part of the pattern. So the next part of the pattern is the road of trials. So the hero always goes on a road of trials where he has his initial adventures, he learns new things about himself, he gains capabilities. For you, in your cultivation of the Tao, you discover, wow, there's actually a lot that I had to unlearn. This stuff makes sense, but I'm hampered by the things that used to be dogmatic concepts in my mind. Without realizing it, I have to let them go. So the road of trials for the Tao cultivator is to unlearn the things that are no longer useful, that have become baggage, and you need to relinquish them. Along the way, the hero finds mentors and helpers. So everyone knows that we have, Star Wars mentors like Yoda, Obi-Wan Kenobi. These are mentors to help Luke gain mastery of his Jedi skills. You've got C-3PO, R2-D2. These take the place of helpful animals in legendary tales to help the hero. For someone on a journey of Tao cultivation, you come across teachers and like-minded friends. So think about what we're doing right now. We're gathering together to learn about the patterns of the Tao. We are friends to one another. We are getting into this whole thing, this adventure together. So we're part of the pattern. It's happening right now. At some point, the hero confronts the challenge. So the challenge in a movie about good versus evil is going to be the personification of evil. The hero will come up against it, thinking that, well, I've got mentors and helpers, I've learned new things, I've gained my new skills, so I'm going to take you on. For the Tao cultivator, it can be one of the biggest challenges of all, and that's dealing with the ego. Well, the ego is not an easy adversary. It's monstrous. It's insidious. It's worse than any movie villains that we know. So confronting the challenge of dealing with the ego. So in the hero's journey, there's the dark night of the soul. That is what happens when you confront the challenge and you lose. In the Tao cultivation, you fail. You let your arrogance get the best of you. You show that you still have a lot of work to do. There's the metaphorical death of the ego. When you realize that, well, I thought that I have learned a lot, but I have actually learned nothing at all. That's part of the pattern. It's okay. You're on the journey. It's part of the pattern that predictably will occur. So what is the most important thing is what happens right after that. What happens after the dark night of the soul is revelation and rebirth. That means, like a phoenix rising from the ashes, you experience a spiritual rebirth. A spiritual renewal, if you will, where you realize that, well, not everything I learned has been in vain. There are good things that I can build on, and it starts right now. What happens after revelation and rebirth is just as important. That is the process in the pattern known as transformation and the attainment of triumph. Transform and triumph. This means in Tao cultivation, after rising up from failing to deal with your ego, you finally master the lesson. So you now, this is toward the end of a movie, you now have done something. You have struck a blow against the evil empire, so to speak. And now the student becomes the teacher. Having attained that mastery, humbled by the experience, you now are in a position to mentor and help others. And so the cycle begins anew. What a marvelous pattern that we're all in the middle of. We're all still in it right now. So let me show you that graphic again, just to make the point that having gone through that example on applying the hero's journey to Tao cultivation, you can probably see yourself going through some of this process. So again, patterns everywhere. We see the image of the patterns, and the more you become aware in the Tao, the more you see them everywhere, and the more clearly you perceive them. So that's it. That's all I want to say about seeing the image in the Tao. Let's move on. There's plenty more in the chapter to explore. But remember, hero's journey. You're the hero, and you're on a journey. Let's go to line 9 of Tao Te Ching 21. It says, so deep, so profound. So as I mentioned previously, it's got 2 repeating characters, which are sentence ending punctuation characters. In ancient Chinese, they can serve the function of emphasis or exclamation. So the first and third characters, deep and profound, are similar in meaning. So basically, Lao Tzu here is repeating himself twice, using 2 different characters with similar meaning, followed by an exclamation character after each one. So here's the observation. This is the most that Lao Tzu has emphasized anything out of the entire Tao Te Ching, out of the entirety of all 81 chapters. This is the most that he has emphasized anything of that entire text. So it's got to be important. We can tell that it's important. Important to him, important to the study of the Tao. Deep and profound. So at this point, there are 2 questions that I would like everyone to ponder. This is the interactive part where I will pause slightly, so to give everyone a chance to type in your thoughts and answers. Sort of a quiz, if you will. Question 1. Sometimes Tao masters say the Tao is simplicity itself. So does this line invalidate that? So this line is saying that the Tao is so deep and so profound. And yet, we've said before that the Tao is simple, simplicity itself. Isn't that a contradiction? So that's a question for everyone to ponder. We're gonna come back to that, and I'm hoping that some of you will type in your answers in what you think. Here's the second question. Along with chapter 1 of the Tao Te Ching, does this line affirm that the Tao is so mysterious that we can never figure it out? It says that it's so deep and so profound. It's mysterious. It's mystical. In chapter 1 of the Tao Te Ching, that's what it says. Mystery upon mysteries. So, limited human minds faced with the infinite Tao, is it hopeless? All right, so those are the questions. Let's start with question 1. Not going to reveal my contribution to the answers just yet. Going to pause for a moment to see what you all think. Question 1. Is the Tao simplicity itself, or is it so deep and profound? Is it a contradiction? Okay, good. Simple but not easy. Yep. We see plenty of things that can be simple, but not quite so easy. And it can be that the profound is revealed within simplicity, and therefore there's no contradiction. I like that answer. Excellent. And the depth of the Tao is the revelation. Thank you, Milton. The Tao is simplicity, but very difficult to put into practice. I think so as well. Suzanne, you're right. And Kevin, both, no contradiction. E is equal to mc squared. It's both simple and profound. Kevin, you actually took the words right out of my mouth. Let me reveal my answer. Here's what I would like to suggest. No, the Tao isn't any one thing. It isn't just simple. It's not just difficult. It's not just challenging. It's not just easy. It's actually everything. In this case, it's both deep and simple because one does not preclude the other. So, some examples. Einstein's mass energy equivalence, E is equal to mc squared, appears simple and yet contains astonishing depth. So I absolutely agree with Kevin. Kevin also says Tao is a massive organizing principle, so it's deep. So when you see it, when you come into contact with it, it really changes everything. It changes you. It's the transformation. So I also absolutely agree with Suzanne, who also, in a similar way, took the words right out of my mouth. And here it is. Apply the Tao is also simple and profound. Apply the Tao. How much more simple can it be? It's simple. And yet, I see so many people failing to be able to do that. And indeed, Pamela says, simplicity reveals the space of depth and profundity. Absolutely. Absolutely true. So I think, you guys, we're on the same page. I think we're going along the flow in a similar way. We understand one another. Take a moment to feel this energy that's coursing through the meeting itself. Energy from you, energy from me, from everyone else, intermixing together, producing interesting results, synergistic effects. That's the Tao. Now, the other question. Along with chapter 1 of the Tao Te Ching, does this affirm that the Tao is so mysterious that we can never figure it out? So this is intended to be the simpler of the two questions. After all, we are here trying to figure out the Tao. So I hope no one thinks that our endeavor here is completely hopeless. So as you would expect, no, the Tao is both mysterious and clear. There are definitely mysteries within it we do not understand, no doubt about that. At the same time, there are also aspects to it that we do understand quite well. And this is really no different from other fields of study. We look into anything at all, there's always going to be something that are still waiting to be figured out, that are still not completely understood. Even if we're not talking about cosmology or physics, quantum mechanics and stuff like that, even in health, well-being, let me tell you, the connection between body and mind has plenty of mysteries. The placebo effect, let me tell you, we do not understand that completely. There are mind-boggling things about the placebo effect we haven't straightened out. Something as simple as that. Something as simple as swallowing a sugar pill, have someone tell you that it's a pain reliever, and you believe in it, and having the pain actually subside. So there are plenty of things that are both mysterious and clear. In the Tao, there are central mysteries, no doubt about that. But that doesn't mean that it's hopeless for human beings. We can figure out quite a bit. And what we can figure out, even just a little bit of that understanding, creates powerful effects in our lives. And this again echoes what Kevin is saying. She types, the Tao is massive, organizing principle, deep, and when you see it, changes everything. So yeah, this stuff is simple, but also extremely profound. There's no doubt about that. Let's continue on. I think we're off on a good track. So let's tackle line 10. Within it, there is essence. So here's what it says. Here's what it's supposed to convey. In addition to image, which as you have seen in the early part of this meeting, they are patterns embedded in nature, in reality, in existence itself. There is also substance that we can see within the Tao, that are material things that ultimately come from somewhere, which is nowhere. In addition to image and substance, we can also feel an essence within the Tao. What is that essence? That essence is how you feel the Tao, what the Tao is like. Like when you can feel the essence of a person, you may, for instance, be able to feel the essence of a person as generosity and compassion. You may feel the essence as of someone, who is kind, or perhaps the opposite, hostile, resentful. That's a possible essence. So what is the essence of the Tao? Well, people have always attempted to describe the essence of the Tao in various ways. This is the part of Tao cultivation where I'm going to say there are no real wrong answers here. The reason why there are no wrong answers is because the essence of your perception reflects the Tao within you. So one way to express that is to say, you speak only your own truth. So now comes another question for everybody. For you yourself, how you feel, I invite you to answer this question. What is the essence of the Tao like to you? How would you describe the essence of the Tao in your own words? No real wrong answers. I'm just fascinated by how people see it, by how different individuals will have a different take on it. And when I have your answers, I will also share with you one interesting take on the essence of the Tao. Excellent, Suzanne. The essence of the Tao is welcoming and peaceful. And remember, what you perceive reflects the Tao in you. So without ever having met Suzanne in person, I can see from here that she is a welcoming and peaceful person. So here's a take on the essence of the Tao that I would like to share with you. I call it one description because it's not a definitive description. It's not the be-all and end-all. And I also like Sam's description that the essence of the Tao is infinite possibilities. This means, to me, that Sam perceives the infinite possibilities in his own life. That is the essence, not just of the Tao, but also the Wu Wei, the principle, the plain wood. So Milton perceives the essence of a natural, introspective disposition. And that's a reflection of Milton's own disposition. And for Walt, the essence of the Tao is the warmth of understanding, the aha moment. Yes, indeed, these are all excellent answers. The description that I want to share with you is from this. So this is from a movie. This character from a movie, his name is Ricky. What he's doing is that he's got a camcorder. He's recording videos of what he observes around him. Now, he's not recording videos of, for instance, sporting events. He's not recording videos of, for instance, beauty as other people see it, like models and so on. He is recording beauty as he sees it, and the beauty that he perceives is everywhere, and it's the beauty of the ordinary manifesting, and you can just sort of peek into the extraordinary essence behind it. So as he's explaining himself to another character in the movie, here's what he says. He says that one day he is outside and it's like just before it started snowing, so the air is electric. There's wind whipping up everything around him, including a bag. There's a bag that's moved by the wind. And as he looks at the bag, it seems to have a mind of its own. That is, it's coming towards him, then it's backing away, it's twisting in the air, it's going up, it's coming down, it's like beckoning him. And he pulls out his video camera. He is like, this is so cool, I gotta capture this. And as he captures this in video, he says, that's the day I realized that there was this entire life behind things, and this incredibly benevolent force that wanted me to know there was no reason to be afraid, ever. So he never ever once used the term the Tao, but I think you look at these words and you recognize that's exactly what he's talking about. He's talking about this force beyond forces, this orchestration behind everything that pulls everything together. And I know that you guys feel the same thing or something similar. So, for instance, my friend Krister says the essence feels like a calm river of potential that is always there, that I can tap into for whatever reason. I just need to be calm in order to tap into it. Yes, indeed. So this particular movie is called American Beauty, and the author of the movie was definitely immersed in Tao concepts. So the Tao is never once mentioned, but if you look at the movie with that in mind, you'll be able to tell. But this is just to illustrate that there are many different takes on the essence of the Tao. So what the essence is depends on what you feel. So there's more. We all feel different things about the Tao. So the descriptions that you heard were quite varied just now. So we can certainly discuss and disagree on the specifics, kind of what we're doing now. So we can have a discussion on, well, does the Tao really want anything? Can it really be welcoming or unwelcoming? Can it want something? It's not a human being. It's not a personified deity. Is the Tao benevolent, or is it indifferent? Or is it reflective of what is within? So by bringing up these questions, my intention is not to try to shoehorn everyone into a particular answer. This is just to make a point that the essence of the Tao can appear differently to different people at different times in different moods. But then here's another point, the major point that Laozi is making. Whatever you and I may think about the Tao, there's one constant. It is there. There's a there. Have you heard people say that? There's a there. It exists. It's real. Wow, boy, is it ever real. But the question is why? Why is that? We don't see compelling reasons for there to be something rather than nothing. You know, this universe in which we inhabit, why are we in it? Why is there something rather than nothing? No compelling reason. Nevertheless, the Tao exists, and its essence exists. Reality has a way about it. The universe has a way about it. So it's quite real. So if you reference back to the original says, so deep, so profound. Within it, there is essence. Its essence is supremely real. Now you can see exactly what it's talking about. Let's tackle line 12. We have a character here that I've singled out, xin. So in pinyin, it's xin, but the sound is like shin. So in pinyin, the X is always like SH. What does it mean? It's faith, trust, belief, confidence. So all closely related meanings embedded, incorporated in this one character. So now let's look at the line, 其中有信. So what it says is that within the Tao, within it, the Tao, there is faith. Within the Tao is what we believe. So there's a couple of ways that we can approach this. Number one, we believe in the reality of the Tao through our observations and reasoning ability. We see the way the world is, we make our observations, and we reason. It's only that way, it can only be that way if the Tao exists, if there's a way for it to be. Number two, we have faith that the Tao will take us to our destination. That is, we trust the path is the right path. So you're on the path, I'm on the path, we're fellow travelers, we're traveling together. And we're pretty sure, we have faith that the Tao will take us to where we want to go. Spiritual understanding, enlightenment, spiritual liberation, freedom, and so on. Let's keep it moving. We're now on line 13. Line 13 says, from ancient times to the present. And then it goes on to, its name never departs. Let's focus in on 13 first. When Laozi wrote from ancient times to the present, what he meant was from times ancient to him, to his own time, his own present. And of course, his own time is 2,500 years ago, and that's ancient to us. As we look at this particular line, though, there is absolutely nothing to stop us from having it mean something to us, which is to say, expand that timeline, expand the meaning of this line to include the time of Fuxi, the legendary emperor, Huangdi, the yellow emperor, and I Ching, which is 4,600 to 5,000 years ago, to the time of Lao Tzu, 2,500 years ago, to this moment right now, right here and now, in the year 2019. So from back then, and I wrote specifically include to mean that we can expand even further to include from the beginning of time to the present moment. Okay, line 14. Its name never departs. 其名不去. It means the Tao is always the Tao. It's always called the path or the way because it's always nameless. It doesn't really have a name. It's just a way. Let's keep moving. Making pretty good progress. I hope to get to the bottom of this chapter today. But we've had some really solid discussions. I'm happy about that. Line 15, to observe the source of all things. So what this says is that anyone with eyes to see, we can all look around and we can see continuous universal creation, no matter which way we turn. We look at nature, we see life, we see plants, animals, life coming into being, the sprouting of plants, the birth of babies. We look around in human society, we see continuous universal creation by people, creating new ideas, new inventions, new ways to be. Everywhere we look, we see creation absolutely in every direction. So, of all these different acts of universal creation, we can't always see where something's coming from. We don't really see the source of everything that's being created all around us. Occasionally, if you were to witness a birth, you can get a partial view of the power of creation. Other than that, we're at a loss. We don't know, for instance, how originally life came to be. We just know that there was a source of some kind. The source must be present. As far as universal creation, as far as the invention of ideas and concepts, and everything else we see, the source is not just in one particular place, but it's everywhere. It's everywhere all at once. So now the question is, how do we know? How do we know all this? How can I be so sure about the nature of the ultimate source? Now, we come at the last line, which is also the most important. The last line, only 2 characters in the original Chinese, 2 words in English, with this. That's it, with this. The last line of the chapter is also the most important. It's meant to be simple and profound at the same time. We just got done talking about how the Tao can be simple and profound at the same time. Excellent. That meant that we had an idea to prepare us for the very end. So the key is to fully comprehend the full scale of this. what is this? When Lao Tzu says, with this, what is it? So remember, why is this important? Because knowing this leads you to knowing the nature of the source, which is the Tao. The Tao is the source of universal creation, or it's a name that we give to the infinite source of universal creation. So you have already seen in the other lines of this chapter that there are multiple layers of the onion, so to speak, multiple levels of meaning, and we peel back those layers one by one. Here we also have more than one meaning. So I think we have time for one layer, one level, and then we probably have to jump to the summary. So the first layer, the first level of the meaning is the present moment awareness. This, with this is a reference that points directly to this moment in time, this instant, right here, right now. So please take a moment to feel this instant, right here, right now. You and me, we're communicating back and forth. There's a certain energy in the group, very distinct, that you can feel. So this is all about present moment awareness. So Lao Tzu is talking about present moment awareness. What does it mean? It means several things. First, being mindful of the richness inherent in every moment, including the one you are now experiencing and enjoying. Yes, I definitely feel the richness inherent in this moment right now, this moment we're all experiencing and enjoying together. That's number one. That's number one in the present moment awareness. Number two, when you are able to live fully in the present, what happens is that you regain your freedom from negative emotions, like worries, anxieties. And the reason why is because those negative emotions come from either regrets of the past or fear of the future. In particular, fear of the future is what gives rise to anxieties, to a case of the nerves. If you free yourself from that, well, you can do so by living in the here and now, fully in the present. And when you are present in the present, when you are present in the present moment, you also gain the ability to calm down and deal with the chaos all around you peacefully and effectively. And this is a part in the Tao that is easier said than done. We probably have all had the experience of being able to calm down and deal with chaos peacefully and effectively. The work of Tao cultivation is to make it so that we can have those moments predictably, consistently. Lastly, and number four, bears upon this line, the very end of the chapter that we're currently studying. You can feel, when you have present moment awareness, you can feel, you can directly connect to the Tao that is omnipresent, that is present everywhere. And that is how you know its nature. You know its nature because you can connect directly to it. So what Lao Tzu is saying is that, well, how do I know this? How do I know the nature of the source? Because of this, by this, with this. So one part of it, this important part, is the present moment. So what's the other part? The other part we have to talk about next time to complete our discussion of this. And we'll do that along with the paraphrase for this entire chapter. Yeah, we're running out of time. Just when it's getting good, as usual. So let's move on to the summary. So here are more contemplations, considerations about the Tao. So question, how do you see the Tao? How do you relate to it? This is another way to ask the question, how does the essence of the Tao feel? What is it like to you? So I want to find out about your connection to the Tao and the specific way that you relate to the Tao. Is the Tao a source of philosophical ideas to contemplate? Well, it certainly is that to me. How about to you? Second one, is it one of the several spiritual paths you are currently investigating? We come across quite a few people who come and go, and it's because the Tao is one of the several paths they are investigating. And for me, I'm going to have to answer no. It's the one path. It's the one thing from my perspective. Not sure how it is for you, but for me, it's the one. Next, is it a path that you follow in life? For me, the answer is a definite yes. This is what I follow. This is what I do. This is also what I enjoy sharing with other people. So these are questions for you to contemplate. I would be very interested in finding what your answers are to these questions. Of course, there's more to the slide. The next part of the slide is about the one. This is a preview of the other side of the meaning that we will get to at the beginning of our next meeting. The one thing. What is the one thing? The one thing for anyone is the one thing that is the most important thing than anything else in life. So I think this question will make more sense after we've had a full discussion about the one thing. And the question is going to be, what is the one thing for you? Have you found the one thing in your life? And if you have not, how will you explore and examine your own life in order to figure out what the one thing is, or perhaps what the one thing ought to be? Do you have an idea? I'm going to leave everyone with these questions, and we're going to go ahead and bring the meeting to a close.
Our meeting has come to an end, but the journey continues on. Let us travel safely. Until next time, may the Tao fill you with peace and happiness.